10 mastering mistakes that are ruining your songs. Let's go. Hello everyone, welcome back to MixFest TV. Hope you guys are having a great day. Before we start, check the info box down below for free plugin special discounts, offers, and if you haven't already, please go check out the new website mixfesttv.com. In there you will find all the mix and mastering courses available on many different genres, start to finish. On the website you can also book all the other services, mixing, mastering, mix consultation, and private lessons. If you want to access the exclusive videos here on YouTube, click the join button, become a MixFest TV member. You will also get mix consultations with it. If you haven't already, check out Bella Kelly's new single Goodbye, available on all platforms, and if you have questions about the mix, let me know. There's also an acoustic version featuring Monty Pittman here on YouTube. And finally, if the videos are helping you, you want to support the channel, consider using the super thanks or grab some merch. Mastering mistake number 1. Searching for a one-fit-all mastering chain. While it's good to have some go-to pieces, whether it's analog or plugin or a combination of the two, there's no such a thing as one-size-fits-all. There's no such a thing as settings that will work on any song. For sure, there are a handful of processors that will make your masters more often than others, and those, again, whether are software or hardware, are my favorite kind of tools. When I stress how important for a tool is to be versatile, that's what I mean. I value a lot more a compressor or an EQ or a saturator that I'm able to use on multiple projects, on multiple genres, on multiple songs, even if I have to tweak it, than a one-trick pony that is amazing, but it only does one thing. And most important, if you're on a budget and you don't know what to get, you should always get the versatility first. That would be your priority, and then you expand your palette with the one-trick ponies and the specialty colors later. Mistake number 2, using compressors as limiters or thinking that they are interchangeable. They are very much not interchangeable. If you need a compressor, you need to know why you need compression, especially in mastering, and when you need a limiter. The limiter is kind of easy, right? Control the peaks, bring the level up. There's not much to it. But a compressor is a whole different ball game, because very rarely, at least I personally, use a compressor with a super fast attack trying to catch peaks. Because you will notice that no matter how transparent a compressor is, compression out of the 4 tools that we use to control the nominal level of our material so we can bring it up in level, then those would be clipping, saturation, which could be the same thing, limiting, and compression. Compression is the last. Because usually compression with a fast attack will make the transient duller audibly. Usually, which means not all the time, it's not a rule, a lot more than clipping or limiting or saturation. And you will ask, so what do you use compression for in mastering? How? When? Of course, this would be a long video to respond in detail, but generally speaking, and I think this is one point that a lot of newbies, without wanting to offend anyone, don't get. Compression in mastering is more, again, more, not exclusively, not all the time, more about the macro dynamics of a mix than the micro dynamic of a mix. So you're not trying to catch kick and snare, you're trying to massage the overall macro dynamic of the music piece that you're working on, so there's not too much swing. Sometimes instead, you use a compressor to enhance the attack of the fast transient, as opposed to reduce them and catch them and use it as a limiter. So quite the opposite, because in that way you might be able to push a little more into the clipping and the limiter, or maybe the mix is lacking punch. That's how you do it. If then we go into multiband compressor, that's a whole different Pandora's box, because the possibilities are endless. You use multiband compression when the mix is unbalanced, there's too much high mid-range, too much top end, too little low end, or the low end is there but is uncontrolled, but you don't want to mess with the rest of the mix. So many situations and many variables come to play when using multiband compressor in mastering. I have a ton of videos on that. I also have many mastering courses on the website that will show you various cases. And I'll close this with a qualifier. That does not mean that you never use compression with a fast attack in mastering. It's just personally, for me, it's quite rare. I like other tools before that, but if the mix is a little too pointy and actually benefits from that kind of treatment, of course, you use it. Mistake number 3, arguably the most important, especially if you're not a professional engineer, not level matching. louder is not better, it's just louder. So if you're compressing and you are even 1 dB higher in level than without the compression, your brain, I promise you, will tell you, good job. This move with this compressor was awesome. It sounds a lot better. Nope, it's just louder. And it really takes even half a dB. Some people are more sensitive than others, but on 1 single dB will be enough to trick any brain out there to think that it's better with than without. Same goes with saturation, same goes with EQ, same goes with the widener, same goes with any single tool that you could possibly use. If you don't level match, you will never know if it's better or worse because your brain will tell you louder, better. Mistake number 4, I understand perfectly that this, in most cases, is a byproduct of people mastering their own music in their home studio, not a professional mastering studio without a professional mastering monitoring system, and so they rely too much on analyzers. Analyzers are great tools. They help our job a lot, but they only tell you a little tiny part of the story. Unfortunately or fortunately, music is pure perception. So it doesn't matter what you see, it doesn't matter what number shows up, nothing matters other than or more than what you hear. It is very possible that you compare your track with another track and the frequency analyzer look as close as it can for being a different song. The metering measures the same, and then you hear the two songs and one sounds a lot worse. That is because there's so many things the analyzer simply cannot tell you. The relationship between the elements in the mix, the harmonic content of a mix, how much saturation there is, what's the BPM of the song. So a slow song would probably measure lower than a fast song because simply it has more audio events happening in a certain time frame. So there is a ton of things that the analyzer either will just wildly guess or simply not take into consideration. So always try to do any kind of processing or make any kind of decision not looking at the analyzer unless you are doing very detailed work, and in that case the analyzer speed up your work. It confirms what your ears are hearing. Mistake number 5, this is modern music plague: too much limiting and clipping. This is pretty obvious and self-explanatory, and a lot of people still ask me like, what's a good number? Well, I can't give you a good number because it depends on the song. So a couple of things on this. Let's start by saying that even if I can't give you the number, I can tell you this: 10 dB of limiting and or clipping or both combined, 90% of the time, it's way too much. That's not how you get a loud mix. That's not how you get a loud master. That's insanity. And I left a 10% out there for the crazy sounding things that are out there. But chances are, if you're limiting and or clipping 8 to 10 dB on your mix, that ain't gonna sound pretty. At the same time, it really depends on the song, because of course, Lana Del Rey will require a different style than Korn or Rammstein. And a certain aggression, even audible saturation or audible compression sometimes, and a couple of stages pushed a little too much will not only fit better that track and maybe some genre, but in many cases it became a style, it became a standard, it became something that enhances the song. You do the same thing for a ballad, it's gonna sound horrible. And here we go back to one of my most popular videos of all times: loudness is not in mastering. It's all about the mix and all about the crest factor. If you haven't watched this video, which I don't think you haven't because everybody did, but I'll post it here or in the info box down below. But as you know, I do mix consultations and final product consultation, and sometimes it happens that the client or one of you subscribers and members of the channel, they send me the mix and the master, right? 9 times out of 10, 9.9 times out of 10, the mix is much better than the master. This goes back to the fact, you know, I always say it, you shouldn't master your own mixes unless you're a professional. You've been doing this for 20 years successfully for other people, right? And there's a whole different discussion, but 9 times out of 10, the mix is so much better than the master. And one of the reasons, we'll touch the other reasons in the next points, is that is squashed too much. There's too much limiting, there's too much clipping, there's too much saturation, there's too much distortion. The mix that was nice, now it hits a wall just for the sake to get to -7, -6, -4 LUFS, and it sounds like absolute crap. And so this is still one of the most common mistakes that I see. With that said, loudness is important. The loudness war is not over. It will probably never be over for many, many reasons. And I myself, I am not against loud masters at all. I mean, at this point, it's pretty clear if you followed my career or my channel, it is very much possible to make loud masters that sound clear, and they sound clear, they don't sound smashed. So actually, this is one of the hardest thing to do. Regardless the genre, regardless what is your ceiling or your reference, the challenge is still valid, is still there. Being able to make a loud mix that sound good and punchy and clear requires a lot more skills than have the same characteristics with a much lower LUFS level for your master. And this also doesn't mean that if you are able to do a clear, loud master and clean, you should do it regardless just because you can. Because some songs simply don't benefit from that type of sound. Regardless how clean you are, there are certain characteristics that are inevitable and they come with loudness to a certain extent. But to say, oh, I hate the loudness war, I'm not into loud masters, that's bullshit. When you don't know how to do it, that's kind of a cop-out. And nobody likes the loudness war. But what we don't like is the loud mixes and songs that sound bad. There's so many examples out there of beautiful songs and beautiful albums that have been completely destroyed just for the sake of loudness. That's what we don't like. Number 6, this is kind of a modern trend. It got worse and worse the past probably 5 to 6 years, I want to say. Too much widening. And I blame all the tools that now we have for widening everything, our mixes, our stems, our whatever, and stereoizing everything, right? Because people now have such an easy access to these tools, they kind of put them everywhere and they use them way too much. But why do they use them too much? Well, it kind of works like the level matching, louder is better, right? This is kind of the same. If you start from point A, and you widen something, it's exciting because it goes out of the speaker, it sounds wider, right? So our brain, for some reason, perceives this effect as pleasant because it's kind of, wow, you know, what's happening here? Like everything became bigger, right? The problem is a non-experienced engineer, whether mix or mastering engineer, doesn't have the experience or the ear training or the knowledge to understand when this effect literally destroys the power of your mix. Why? So the run-of-the-mill widener plugin, like the basic, most basic stock widener plugin, all it does is to turn on the volume of the sides, right? That's why whatever it is on the sides, on the stereo portion of our mix, comes up, everything sounds wider. The problem is you're losing the center. And the center is the power, is the punch, is the impact. And if you had a good balance in the mix, now as you widen, you are trading power for prettiness. And power is more important. So you're trading your kick, snare, lead vocal, bass, all the core and the backbone of your mix for the ear candies. And it's, if you don't know this, is not your fault, so to speak, because like I said, our brain perceives this like exciting. It's an exciting effect, but you need to pay extreme attention. And sometimes, again, for non-experienced engineers, they compare it to another track, their reference mix, and if they are not aware of this, they don't even understand why the other track stomps on their master. Because your master becomes hollow, becomes thin, because you widen it so much and you lost the center where all the power and the energy is. It's not uncommon in mastering to have to reduce something on the sides, whether the whole level or some frequency range, because they fog what's in the middle. It's not clear whether it's the vocals or the bass or the kick or whatever other elements in the chant that needs to deliver either the rhythm or the power or the tone. If it's clouded by something on the side, maybe it's a reverb that, you know, the mix engineer didn't cut, or too much synths or too much whatever, it's not uncommon in mastering to have to reduce the energy, not necessarily the stereo width, but the energy on the sides or certain frequencies. If instead we are talking about advanced tools Like for example, the spacecraft for the plugin guys would be .ms, or the Lit with stereo manipulators, or the new software plugin, the space module on the Fusion. Some of those, in layman terms, mess with the phase, and they do some weird tricks like the spacecraft does, that if you're not aware of what's happening and if you don't know what to listen to, you're gonna mess up your mix. Pair that with the fact that you are not on a professional mastering room with a professional mastering grade monitoring system, or you're on headphones, which headphones for stereo manipulation are, I don't want to go there, they're not the best tool. You're gonna end up with a bad surprise when you play your mix against all the others on Spotify or on small speakers on a car stereo, especially in the car when you don't have the left and right setup like this, but you have speakers around you. If your mix is hollow because you widen it too much, it sounds like nothing. It sounds like a whole lot of mud in the middle where there should be power, and everything else is like floating, and it's a big mess. Mistake number 7, wanting to match too closely your reference mixes. It's a reference. It should be a ballpark reference. Unless you're trying to do a cover one-to-one, your production is different, your tools with which you record are different, your instruments, vocals, lyrics, BPM, harmonic content, arrangement, everything, hopefully, is gonna be different. And even though in hip-hop and trap, it's not that different most of the time, there's a basic beat with vocals on top. Many times, even charting songs don't really have that much vocal production, and so in that case the differences in production and sounds is not that much. It's still not your song, it's not the same. You will also end up over processing yours when probably you didn't need any of that. Mistake number 8 is exactly that, over processing, and this ties up to, I think that was the mistake number 1, wanting a chain that works for everything. A lot of people go into mastering thinking, all right, I'm gonna open corrective EQ, enhancing EQ, compression, saturation, de-essing, widener, limiter. And they don't even consider the idea that all of that should be decided case by case, right? There's no way that you're gonna use all that all the time. And so again, this doesn't happen with professional master engineers, but home studios, that's usually what they tend to do. There's a dynamic EQ, there's this EQ for this. I read that I need a tape emulator and whatever else. No, you don't. What you need to do is to sit and listen. Sit and listen to your mix. If your mix is perfect, utopia, but let's say your mix is perfect, you already have a hard job to do, which is bring that mix to a commercial level, even if it's not stupid loud, let's say -10, -9, without changing the balance of the mix. And that is a task, and it's not easy. It's easier if the mix is perfect, because you don't have corrections to do, and if you're not aiming for stupid loud levels, it won't take you much to be able to bring that mix to level without compromising the punch, without compromising the balance. Because that's another thing. Even if you wanted to bring a mix to commercial levels without changing anything, you will have to do processing for the master to sound exactly like the mix, but louder. Because there are going to be side effects because of the processing that you are gonna do. Unless you do 1 dB of limiting, in which case that's it. That's it's not gonna be audible with the great tools that we have. But more realistically, you will have to maybe tame a little range before feeding into the, let's say, clipper and limiter only, or saturation and limiter only, right? They will change. How about the effects? Whatever low-level information, like a tail of delay or reverbs, will undoubtedly come up. It's a fact. You can't do anything about it, all right? So we go back to the widener thing. Maybe if you want to keep that balance, you need to reduce a little bit what's on the sides, or set the frequencies on the sides, so you can bring it up to level without changing the balance. So think that even if your mix is perfect, you will have things to do to maintain that. Now, more realistically, almost every mix has room for improvement, but that doesn't mean that you open 7 processors and by default you think, I have to use this, and this. This is the mastering chain that engineer uses. First of all, It works for him, not for you. Everybody is different. Every song is different, and every brain and how we interpret songs is different. But most important, you don't have to do anything or use anything. The way you assess what to use is to listen. If you have a reference, listen against your reference and try to understand why the mix doesn't sound either how you want it, how the client want it, or how your reference sounds. And then you need to know your tools very well and pick and choose which one is gonna be the one for the job today. But don't over process, and remember that mastering is fine details. It's not meant to mangle a mix that is a 2 into a 10. First of all, because it ain't gonna happen. And second, because if you have to be so heavy-handed in mastering, it is going to be a compromise, and it's always better to go back to the mix and retouch what's wrong there. Mistake number 8, I think, when monitoring on small speakers, laptops, phones, Bluetooth speakers, not knowing how to monitor on those media and not understanding what are you looking for. Here's what happens, especially if you master your own mixes and maybe you produce and recorded a song as well. You worked on your song for a month or how long it is, which is an issue already because you lost objectivity even if you sleep 5 days in between sessions. The problem is you are so used to hear, first of all, every single sound that is in that song. Things that the listener will never pick up, never, all right? And also you are so used to dissect every single sound on your monitoring system, which may or may not be amazing. What happens is you don't have the same experience with your reference mix. What I'm trying to say is you need to learn what your references lose when going from your monitoring system to the consumer media. And you need to try to understand if your mix loses more or the same. Because obviously your mix is gonna sound different on your phone that sounds on a full range speaker system. But all the mixes are like that. One thing that you can do to help is to try to do the same. So listen to all your reference there and listen to all your reference on those consumer speakers as well, and trying to assess if the difference is the same. And listening on different speakers and systems is useful as long as you do it correctly, because I've seen many people getting so obsessed that that one little sound that they put, it's not heard in their phone or the laptop or the little speakers, and they want to change a million things on the mix to make that happen, when they don't understand, listen, your reference loses 10 things going from here to there. But we are not so attached to our reference as we are to our own songs, right? Emotionally attached. So we just hear it, we know the song, we know how the song sounds, we heard them many times if it's our reference, and so we kind of recreate how it sounds even if it sounds from there. Plus, if it's a successful song, there's a bias. Yeah, that's it. That's how it sounds. I want to sound the same. Well, is the production the same? Is the vocal production the same? Is a lot of things are the same. So understand how to reference on consumer speakers. I think this is 9, 10. I lost count. Anyway, color is not always better. Mastering actually ideally should be as transparent as possible, but the barrage of mastering plugins available and secret matching plugins and processing under the hood that you turn a knob and it does 50 things made it so people think that you need color at the mastering stage, whether it is tape, whether it's saturation, whether it's a secret plugin that you turn a knob and you don't know what's happening, and most likely 2 things are happening: a little bit of saturation and a little bit of brightness. That would have been another point, but it was too similar to the loud thing and level matching, and it would be brighter is better, right? Brighter is not better. And I said this many times in other videos, every time you touch the top end knob, your brain will tell you this is better. Another issue that I find when people send me their mix and master for a consultation, the master is 99% of the times brighter than the mix, and it's too bright when the mix was well balanced. And so color is not always better. You should start actually mastering with transparent tools, a transparent EQ, a transparent compressor, everything transparent, and then bring the color if you feel that the mix is lacking something, whether it is a multiband compression, whether it's a colored compressor, whether it is a saturator, whether it is whatever else you want to add. But it shouldn't be by default that you bring in a super colored compressor. First of all, because we go back to mistake number one, there's no one chain that goes for everything. Sometimes I use the 670 for mastering, but no way in heaven that is gonna go well for everything. Just like a transparent compressor could work on something, but it wouldn't be the best choice. Maybe the Dictator is the best choice. So that's my point. Color is not always better, so don't slap color and don't start with color just cause. And I think this is it for this video. But if you want to add some other common mistakes that you run into, put it in the comments down below. Same, if you have questions, put everything in the comments down below. If you want your song mastered here or mixed, you can go on mixbusstv.com. You can book all the services there. In there you can also find all the mix and mastering courses, start to finish, on many different genres. Take a listen to Bella's new song Goodbye and the acoustic version featuring Monty Pittman. Share the song, that would be much appreciated. Click the join button to access the exclusive videos here. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. Stay safe. See you next time.